What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome back to another Dragon Ball fan manga breakdown review, where today we're going to be reviewing the fan manga entitled Dragon Ball Super EX, which is a fan-made Dragon Ball manga set to take place after Dragon Ball Super's Tournament of Power. As for many years now, I've been reviewing and introducing all kinds of Dragon Ball fan mangas to the world created by the community for the community, so if you guys are interested in seeing and reading up on incredible stories and concepts such as Dragon Ball AF, Dragon Ball Legendary, Dragon Ball New Age, Dragon Ball X, and many others, then feel free to check out the Dragon Ball fan manga playlist in the description box for more videos such as this, as right now we are going to be diving into a brand new manga chapter. As before we begin, if you are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications to be the first to know when a new video is posted onto this channel. And if you guys have not done so already, be sure to go on ahead and check out Dragon Ball Super Kakumei, which is another Dragon Ball manga that takes place after Dragon Ball Super's Tournament of Power, which introduces new gods, new angels, and the inevitable rematch between Ultra Instinct Goku and Beerus, so be sure to go on ahead and check out parts 1 and 2 on the channel, in which the links to both of those manga chapters will be located down in the description box below, as well as the first chapter to Dragon Ball Super X, which showcases Bleed's first encounter with Cabba, so make sure you guys go on ahead and check all of that out, which will be located down in the description box below, as we kick off Dragon Ball Super EX manga chapter number 3, with Gogeta having to observe Bleed as Bleed goes on to ask, Who is this bastard? As Gogeta replies to Bleed by so casually stating, I am not Goku or Vegeta. I am the guy who is going to defeat you. I am Gogeta. As Bleed says, Gogeta? Are you saying that you two bastards combined together? As Cabba shocked by stating, what? What a powerful aura. This is the power of fusion? As Gogeta asks Cabba, give me the sensu beans. As Cabba is reminded, he goes on to state, okay. As Bleed overlooks this, he goes on to state, you may have fused together, but your power has only increased by a small amount. Do you honestly still think you can win against me? As Gogeta so casually eats the sensu bean, he smirks, as he just so casually looks back up at Bleed and stating, I'll win. As Bleed responds by stating, that's big talk. I'll end this in the blink of an eye. Now die. As Bleed attempts to unleash a massive attack, before he can even do so, Gogeta teleports behind him and squeezing his forearm so hard that it's even beginning to break his armor. As Gogeta looks at Bleed, he goes on to state, you will know true regrets after being killed by a Saiyan, you bastard. And immediately, just as quickly as he got there, Gogeta hits Bleed with such velocity in the gut that we see Bleed begin to cough up blood. He seems to be gagging, and that's when Bleed goes on to state, you. As Gogeta sticks his hand out, he casually blasts Bleed back down to the ground. As he begins to maneuver around Bleed as he's descending on down to the ground, Gogeta is beating him up as Bleed is about to hit the floor. And mind you, it's such a ferocious combination that it's breaking all of the armor pieces that Bleed has. And as Bleed is descending even further down to the ground, he's beginning to cry out in agony, and keep in mind, this is only a base Gogeta. And that's when we see base Gogeta deliver a thunderous right uppercut to Bleed's face that it completely knocks all of the armor pieces from his mask out. And that punch alone was so ferocious that Bleed is not only coughing up blood, but seemingly enough it looks like that he is so wounded his pupils have completely faded away. As Cabba can't believe what he's seeing, as Bleed hits the ground, Gogeta looks down on him. With such a disgusting look, Cabba can't even believe it, as Cabba goes on to state, so strong, so cool, this is way beyond a Super Saiyan. As Gogeta comes back down, he goes on to tell Cabba, hold on Cabba, you need to get away from here. As Cabba says, okay Gogeta-san, and as Cabba flies away, Bleed's beginning to stand back up. His body is quivering, he's shaking, he goes on to state, curse you. As we see Gogeta putting his hands together, Bleed responds by stating, I'm not even warmed up yet. As Gogeta casually looks at Bleed and stating, I'll erase any trace of you, Bleed. As Gogeta proceeds to transform further, Gogeta goes on to state, God Big Bang, Kamehameha. And even then, Bleed, as he's acknowledging this, so casually smiles. He's smiling as Gogeta fires off the God Big Bang Kamehameha directly in his direction, and this blast in and of itself is so massive that Bleed acknowledges this, and as Gogeta fires off, Bleed begins to cry out. The blast definitely makes contact with Bleed as we see a massive explosion occur. Cabba's up in the sky and Cabba thinks that Gogeta had won the day, as he goes on to state he did it! But Gogeta seems like he knows something because he's not smiling, and as he looks on out, Cabba also notices that Bleed's hands are still up in the air and he looks like he's shaking, and all that's really left is a massive crater with Bleed in the middle. So it looks like the blast did in fact connect, but Bleed is still alive. Although all of his armor pieces have completely been disintegrated, he still remains. As he laughs, Gogeta goes on to state impossible. Bleed goes on to proceed to tell Gogeta, who was it that was going to be erased again, you say? As Cabba even looks down, he goes on to state it can't be. How? As Gogeta smiles, Gogeta goes on to tell Bleed, my technique and skill far surpasses yours. As Bleed responds, he goes on to state, how could you be so sure? I haven't even used my full power yet. As Gogeta states, oh yes, I remember you saying something like that. As a member of the combative Saiyan race, teasing that you have more power is something that greatly interests me. But, unfortunately, this is the last time I'll get to play with you, because this last shot is going to be your end. As Bleed overhears this, he doesn't seem to be concerned, but instead, he opens up his eyes like a psychopath and smiles. Gogeta notices this, but immediately as he does so, Bleed takes off in the air as he leaps on forward, causing a massive force that hits Gogeta onto the floor as Bleed overlooks him. As Gogeta looks back up, he goes on to state, what? As Bleed says, oh yes, the real fight begins now, as Bleed begins to transform. And as God Gogeta overlooks this, he goes on to state he's actually going to show me his true power. Well then, all I ask is for you to hurry up. Please do so. Gogeta goes on to state this fusion can't last more than 30 minutes. It has to be quick. As Bleed goes on to state it won't be much longer. Are you prepared? As Gogeta says, sure, whatever, just hurry up, jeez. And as Bleed begins to showcase his power, he begins to transform. And thus, out of the gate, we see how Bleed manages to also, surprisingly enough, have a golden form, in which enter Golden Bleed. As Bleed goes on to tell Gogeta it's okay if you're feeling hopeless right now, and as a response, Gogeta begins to laugh. As he goes on to state, you turned golden too? Okay, but that pisses off Bleed, as he goes on to state, fucking vulgar ape, don't compare me to you! As he charges on in, Gogeta prepares himself as Bleed throws the first shot. And as he does so, Gogeta is seemingly enough very alarmed at Bleed's increase in strength. As he goes on to state, getting bored? Just hurry up and end this. You seem awfully worried about the time. Does that mean that the fused body you have working with has a time limit? Because Bleed notices that Gogeta is rushing him, and that's where Bleed implies that the reason why Gogeta is rushing him is because he's figured out that their fusion has a timer. As Gogeta says, ha, to defeat someone like you, I have plenty of time. As he manages to turn the tides, Bleed immediately grabs Gogeta by the head as he goes on to state, are you looking down on me? And knees him right in the jaw, which is a pretty cool shot if you ask me, before using his tail to whip Gogeta back down to the floor. And as Gogeta hits the ground, Bleed sticks his hands out and crying out, take this, and unleashes a massive amount of energy blast that hit the ground as Bleed cries out, quick death sphere, and firing off a blast that causes Gogeta to stand back up, as Gogeta even goes on to state, this is bad. God Big Bang Kamehameha! As Gogeta retaliates by firing off one more God Big Bang Kamehameha attack, it's as clear as day that now there is a struggle. As we see Gogeta struggle, so does Bleed. But unlike Gogeta, Bleed is actually laughing. As Gogeta goes on to state, you think I'll let you destroy Earth? "You piece of crap," as Bleed says, "Once this is over, you'll have depleted all of the power you have in that pathetic body of yours. Earth won't even stand a chance." As he fires off even more power, Gogeta's feet are seen sinking into the ground as Gogeta is left with no other choice but to use the Kaioken. And as Gogeta fires off the Kaioken, he's still struggling. And even with the Kaioken, it does give Gogeta somewhat of an advantage because, as a result, the sheer force behind both of their blasts caused the beams to cancel out. And as Bleed is trying to figure out where Gogeta had went, he goes on to state he canceled it out. As Gogeta uses instant transmission, he goes on to tell Bleed, "Let's get back to it, you bastard," and punches Bleed directly in the face. But let's not forget, even with Kaioken, Bleed is still hanging in there. And as Gogeta goes to punch him again, Bleed blocks by using his shin as he retaliates by grabbing Gogeta via his tail and locking him in place. And as Bleed is holding Gogeta in place, both individuals seem to be battling it out as Bleed handicaps Gogeta by keeping his left arm intact while kicking him numerous times in the face. But then that's when Gogeta manages to outsmart Bleed by sticking out his left hand. As Bleed acknowledges this, he quickly goes on the defensive as Gogeta fires off a couple of shots directly in Bleed's face. As Bleed goes on to state, "Barely even a threat." As Gogeta teleports behind Bleed, he responds by stating, "Where are you looking at?" As Bleed turns around, Gogeta goes for the kick, but Bleed blocks. So even though Bleed is a singular fighter fighting a fusion, he's still holding his own relatively well against such a powerful being. As the two begin to fight, it's a back and forth struggle in the sky. As the two exchange blows, you can feel the sheer force behind both of their punches because both of their punches are delivering with such force that it's not only causing them both to bleed out, no pun intended, but it's also delivered on each respect with murderous intent. As we see them both engage, Bleed begins to laugh as he punches Gogeta so hard in the face, he goes on to ask, "What the?" as Gogeta responds by stating, "Piss off, damn it," and kicking Bleed away. And as Bleed is backing up, he goes on to state, "Impossible. How?" As Gogeta smiles, Gogeta goes on to state, "What's wrong? I thought you were going to introduce me to your overwhelming power. Could it be that you aren't used to that form yet?" In which they are referencing Resurrection of F's Golden Frieza, Gogeta goes on to state, "Why don't you surrender now and go home, Bleed?" And Bleed is getting very impatient as he cries out, "Shut up!" As he blasts Gogeta directly in front of him, we see how he's beginning to huff and puff. As he also laughs through the smoke and debris, Gogeta is still standing there. As Gogeta once more goes on to ask, "What's wrong?" The outcome of our match has already been decided. As Bleed says to himself, I refuse to accept that. But Gogeta does, because as Gogeta raises his hands up in the air, just as we've seen in movie 12, a very familiar attack is beginning to formulate, in which as Gogeta is creating the Soul Punisher, he goes on to tell Bleed this move is called the Solar Punisher. A direct hit from this is sure to destroy any doubts you have. As Bleed anticipates this, Gogeta smiles but then immediately charges on in. And that's when Bleed says, God damn it! And right before Gogeta finishes the job, right before Gogeta is able to execute the Solar Punisher, immediately within the blink of an eye, Goku and Vegeta are seen splitting apart. As Goku is seen in his Super Saiyan Blue form having to fly past Bleed, we also notice how Vegeta does the same. As both Vegeta and Goku acknowledge this, Bleed turns around very puzzled as to what had just happened. As Goku cries out, "Damn it! We should have had 5 more minutes left!" As Vegeta replies to Goku so angrily in stating, "We did the God Big Bang Kamehameha twice, and then the Kaioken. You should have known we were using too much power, you damn idiots!" and Bleed overhears this and he's laughing because he knows now that he is so far ahead that neither Goku and Vegeta at this given point can even stand a chance. As Gogeta notices, he goes on to state, "Vegeta, behind you!" As quickly as it happened, Bleed swoops on in breaking Vegeta's right arm, very similar to Android 18 in Dragon Ball Z, and as Vegeta cries out in agony, Bleed knocks Vegeta down to the ground. As Goku oversees this, he goes on to state, "Vegeta!" As Bleed says, "Seems like your fusion has ended, huh?" While laughing at Goku, Goku powers up some more and stating, "God damn it," with Bleed having to respond by stating, "You are wounded and you're all on your own with no help from your partner over there, huh?" As Goku says, "Well, that's unfortunate, but I still think I can take you. I guess that remains to be seen though. You want to give it a try?" As Bleed welcomes this, he immediately teleports in front of Goku, punching him so hard in the gut, Goku's coughing up spit and blood. As Bleed had enough, he's beginning to knock Goku around, casually beating him without even giving him any inch to pull for. And as Goku's seen being tossed around by Bleed, Bleed is now having the advantage by laughing at Goku as he kicks and punches him back down to the ground. As we see Goku hit the ground, Vegeta begins to stand up as his body shakes and stating, What a freaking imbecile." As Bleed touches back down, he goes on to tell both Goku and Vegeta, "Even though there's two of you, a Saiyan has never been able to bring me to this point. So, you've earned my praise. It has been over 10 years, no, closer to hundreds of years, since I had to use this much power. To be honest, it has been a lot of fun. I suppose you have my gratitude, but this will be where we lay your grave." As Vegeta looks on over to Goku, he goes on to state, "Kakarot, stand up, damn it. Aren't you feeling well enough yet to turn Super Saiyan God?" As Goku's saying, "Well, yeah, but the amount of damage I can actually inflict, I mean, that's not it." As Vegeta looks on over, he tells Goku, "No, use the Spirit Bomb." As Bleed is beginning to charge up a massive supernova, Goku goes on to state, "Oh, that technique we tested on Beerus-sama's planet, yes. But it takes about 30 seconds to store that much energy. But that should be all the time I need." As Vegeta states, 30 seconds. Just leave it to me. I'll make sure you have the time to prepare. Who do you think you're talking to after all?" As Goku states, "But your arm is messed up." Vegeta isn't having it. For 30 seconds, he charges in there to buy Goku some time. As Bleed notices this, I love how Vegeta begins to charge up all of his energy into one attack and firing it off directly in Bleed's face. And as this is happening, Bleed goes on to state he's sacrificing himself, what a fool! While Goku transforms into Super Saiyan God, he raises his hands as he goes on to ask Sky, Sea, Earth, and all living things in the universe, lend me your energy. As Super Saiyan God Goku is charging up for a God Spirit Bomb. And as Vegeta is shown just unleashing nuclear-like attacks at Bleed, Bleed teleports behind Vegeta and stating, "You're such an eyesore. Now disappear, Vegeta." As Bleed delivers a thunderous kick to Vegeta's face with such force, Vegeta hits the ground, reverts back to base form, and that is all she wrote for Vegeta. Meanwhile, Goku continues to charge up the Spirit Bomb as he says to himself, "Just a little more. Please, hold on just a little longer, Vegeta." As Bleed looks down, he goes on to state, "You still have the nerve to keep living. Your body has completely run out of power, yet you still refuse to die by my kill shots. Whatever, you're just a pitiful animal after all." And then that's when he notices a reflection as he goes on to state, "The sun? No, it's much too big. Wait a minute." As Bleed turns around, he notices a massive Genkidama behind him as he cries out, "What the hell is that?" As Goku quickly notices, he goes on to state, "Ah, damn it, I just need a little bit more time." As Bleed goes on to ask, "You still had that much power? Huh, this place just became a whole lot more dangerous. Okay, now die. As Goku's left there charging up for the Genkidama, Bleed fires off an attack directly at Goku, who is defenseless, but then the attack is immediately cancelled out. As Bleed goes on to state, what? Super Saiyan 2 Cabba emerges out of the blue as he goes on to tell Bleed, hey, over here, Bleed, I won't let you hinder Son Goku. As Bleed is shaking out of anger, he goes on to state, I think I know him. Wait, you're that little bastard that got away. As he charges towards Cabba's direction, Bleed throws a ferocious right hook, but Cabba dodges. As Bleed is dumbfounded, he goes on to state, what? As Cabba quickly utters out, Super Gallic Cannon, and shoots it off directly in front of Bleed. In which we know that this blast isn't enough because we see Bleed's hand emerge from the blast itself. He grabs onto Cabba's neck as he's choking the life out of him. Bleed goes on to state, odd? Just now you plunged yourself into this battle despite the obvious difference in power. Well, with that being said, you really just pissed me off. And Goku knows that he still doesn't have enough time as he goes on to state, Cabba, I'm still not there! But then, just as we've seen before, the Spirit Bomb is complete. As Goku cries out, there it is! Bleed! As the manga chapter comes to a close. This was, in my opinion, a very phenomenal manga chapter. The depth in seeing the battle between Gogeta and Bleed, and having to also see Goku's final stand against Bleed in using the God Spirit Bomb is absolutely fantastic. And I highly encourage you guys to support the artist, in which I will leave a link to his Twitter and his website down below for you guys to support him. This guy had been creating such good stories over the last few years. I highly encourage you guys to go on ahead and support him and let him know that I sent you, because this manga chapter, if anything, was absolutely phenomenal in every respect of the word. And I really did enjoy how Bleed had a back and forth with Gogeta, even though Gogeta did seem as if he was slightly more ahead. But what really made all of this stick out was the back and forth that Bleed had with Goku, Vegeta, and Gogeta, in seeing the difference in power, but also having to feel and realize the level of threat that Bleed is. He had already known and had this power for so long that I really loved the puns that they had in referencing Frieza subconsciously by stating, oh, so you're not also used to this form as well, implying that Bleed had quickly rushed in transforming in this form without even getting adjusted to it. So everything about this manga was amazing, and as I said before, if you guys have missed out the previous manga chapters, be sure to go on ahead and check it out. Thank you all so much for watching, guys. Once more, if of course you guys enjoyed, slap a big fat like down below. If of course you guys are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, guys, turn on all notifications, tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing you all down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.
This is the Galactic Emperor of the Universe, and of course I'm here to tell you to subscribe to UnrealEntGaming and all his social media platforms. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you can be the first to know every time that he uploads a new video.
Oh, did someone say UnrealEntGaming? Oh my god.
The fuck's up, on? Put on some clothes!
Well, why don't you put on any clothes?
What? I don't need clothes, but Jesus Christ, that's huge!